So we've the last 2 weeks we've been talking about stewardship. Last week we talked about stewarding our time, and as was mentioned and brought this morning, the cotton balls. I don't have an example like that every time. Although I could just bring it back and just throw one cotton ball out every time for every week of the year or of my life. So if you weren't here last week, so I have been recording these and putting them on so Eastside. I think it's called Eastside Adult Ministries has a YouTube channel specifically for the adult class. So I've been putting them on there, and then I've been trying to share them on Facebook. I think I've done so every time. So you can go and listen. It's just audio. It's not a video. But you can go listen to the lessons if you'd like to later, which doesn't help with the illustration I necessarily did last week because that's visual. But I basically had a giant jar of cotton balls, and I assumed I lived to 80 years old, and I divided up each cotton ball to represent 1 week of my life. And every week, one cotton ball gets thrown out. And eventually, obviously, the cotton balls go away. But just to visualize time of our life and how much time we have, even as we get into our adult years, we still feel like we've got all the time in the world. I mean, unless you're sick or you know someone that recently passed away, it just doesn't seem it should have happened. Mortality doesn't always strike us. We just kind of live every day as the next day. And it just seems like, well, that'll just happen until it doesn't. And we really don't think about how short that is. And so come to find out, if I live to be 80, right, I have 1,900 and now 50 weeks left of my life. It's like 2,200 and some I've spent already. So, when you put it into a number, and 80, that's probably generous. That's not a lot of time. And so talking about stewarding our time and using it wisely, investing it in things that last eternally. And so we've been doing that. This week we're going to talk about basically our health, how we take care of ourselves. Now it's not going to be, and this kind of will tie in a little bit to fasting, which is kind of not surprising, but God doesn't do things accidentally. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not even necessarily one that would say I'm in great health, right? But just our stewardship of our us, right? Our bodies, our health, how we take care of ourselves or don't take care of ourselves, and things of that nature. So I'm not going to really even get into specifics about it, but we're gonna talk about just the idea or the principles of how we look at how we steward our health. So 1 Corinthians chapter 6, these verses we'll read will probably be familiar to you, but verse 19 and 20. I guess I have to get there. That would be helpful. 1 Corinthians 6:19 says, "What? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." Next, go to 1 Timothy 4. 1 Timothy 4. Now, when I was in high school, I had a PE teacher that we had to memorize this 1 Timothy 4a. We had to memorize this verse for PE class. He was an ex-Marine, and he had the crew cut and everything still, and he was like a V, he just walked around. I don't think he had to turn sideways to get through doorways. He was one of those guys. And we had to memorize this verse before we had to quote it before class almost every day, and we had to memorize it for our test as part of our test. So 1 Timothy 4:8. A is what we had to memorize. It says, "For bodily exercise profiteth little," but it does profiteth, right? There is profit there. "But godliness is profitable unto all things, having promise of the life that now is, and of that which is to come." And then go to 3 John 2. 3 John verse 2. 3 John verse 2 says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth." So here we have John writing a letter to Gaius and talking about wanting him to be healthy. So speaking on our health and our physical well-being, from 1 Corinthians chapter 6, we realize and we see what God says is that we don't belong to ourselves. That's the first kind of thought process we need to comprehend and understand and think about, is that our bodies, we don't belong to us, right? We've been bought by Jesus' blood. He gave his life, His physical life, he gave that for us in our life, which means that our spirit, our soul, our body, they don't belong to us. Now, we live our life as though it does, right? We live our life often without really even thinking about it, and we're just doing our thing. We're busy, like we talked about last week with time. We're busy, and we live our life. And even as adults who are Christians, who are trying to do the right thing and live for the Lord, we often don't even necessarily think about the fact that we don't belong to us. Everything we do should be glorifying God. That's his purpose, right, for us, is to glorify him in everything we do, for every moment, not just at church, not just with our spouse or our kids, but everything we do should bring glory to him, and that includes our physical body and how we take care of ourselves. We have strength, right, where we all were able to get up, we all got dressed, we all, for however long it took some, and not as long others, but we're all here, we're all in class, we're all able to have enough energy to get out and do things. And all the strength that God has given us, it belongs to him. And he allows us to use that for things that we want to do. Right? And today we wanted to come to Sunday school, or wanted, maybe strong, but we're here, right? We got up and we came. And he gives us those strength, but the strength that we're given and the way the health that we have is to be used for him. Right? And 3 John talks about Gaius having the strength and the health in order to do the things for the Lord. And that was what John was saying. He wants him to have that. And the ultimate reason for our good health, for our prolonged days, is to more fully glorify him. That's the ultimate goal, right? That's the purpose. So when we have good health, and even when we don't, which we'll talk about that here in a minute too, ultimately everything we do, every day that we live, every moment that we have in this life, our goal and purpose should be to bring glory to him. And there are many ways that we can do that. There are many ways that we fail to do that. Our culture's emphasis on health, right? And I think there always has been an emphasis on health. And health is good, right? Being in good shape, being in good health, and all eating diets, all those things. There, you could go to Barnes & Noble or any library and find volumes and volumes and volumes of health books, dieting books, wellness books, things of that nature. And those are all good things, and those are all positive, and you kind of have to pick and choose what works for you. What works for one doesn't work for everybody. But our culture uses it as a self-glorification thing, right? The world we live in today, and even us as Christians can get in this way that we emphasize health for self-gratification, for self-elevation. It feels better to be healthy. Like, it feels better to sleep well. It feels good when you get good sleep. When you're not sleeping well, for whatever the reason is, you feel lousy. Like, just like brass tacks, it feels better to be in shape. It feels better when you weigh the right amount you're supposed to weigh. Life works out better. Things feel better. You don't get sick as often. So these are all good things, but that's not the reason to be healthy. I mean, we can say, well, the reason to be healthy is to feel good, and the reason you lift weights is so that you look better, right? That's why, when guys lift weights, they're in the bathroom later in the mirror flexing, like, yeah, pretty sure I got bigger this time, right? And it feels good, and you feel good about yourself. It gives you self-confidence and self-esteem. None of those things are wrong or bad, but that's not the reason to lift weights. That's not the reason to go on a diet. That's not a reason to eat things and not eat things. The reason for us as Christians to live that way and to take care of ourselves in that way is to glorify him. So whatever the things are that you do, they should be done with the end goal in mind, to steward your health to be used for him better. So if you're just losing weight so you feel good and you have to buy new clothes, or you're just losing weight so that you look good or other people are impressed by you, go back to fasting to be seen. I mean, if you're losing weight and doing all those things and living healthy so other people notice it, congratulations, you have your reward, right? But we should be doing it with the end goal in mind. It's like, okay, now my body's in better shape to serve him better. I can do more for him. I'll live longer. I can take care of my kids better. I can take care of my wife better, right? All the things that are your responsibility and that God expects from us to do, being in better health and taking care of our health better is a better way to steward yourself than letting it go, right? And we all have areas of our health that we don't do as well as we should, right? And it's not just dieting. I'm not just talking about those things. Some of us have, I've had asthma my entire life, and there are times in my life where I was not very good at, like, stewarding, taking care of myself in that way. because it's monotonous, it's annoying, there are things that you don't want to do, and eventually you pay for it. And then you can't do the things you want to do, right? All the same principles that apply to our time, that apply to our money, also apply to our health and our physical well-being. But I don't think we often think of it that way. We just do whatever. Sometimes we get on kicks, or on health kicks, or diet phase, or whatever we get into. But often, not always, but often we have a hard time sustaining those things for a long period of time. And I think as Christians, if we understand the reason to sustain it is not to feel better or look better or all those things, but the reason to sustain those things is to serve better, it may give us a different perspective on sticking to those things that we feel like God maybe is leading us to do. And that's another thing too. When it comes to health things, God should give you some input on your health choices, right? If we just do these diets or the whatever supplements or whatever you want to throw in, if we just do it because we read a book or an article or someone else said, and we never see what God thinks about it, we never pray about it, then we might as well just be, worldly people writing books trying to make money off things. We should always get God's input on everything we do. So if you're, it sounds kind of silly, but if you're going to go on a diet, maybe you should pray about it. If you're going to change your routine for health reasons, for exercise routine, whatever the case may be, maybe we should pray about it too. Maybe it shouldn't just be I'm getting up early so I can work out, or I'm getting up early, or I'm not eating this, or I am adding this, or I'm staying away from this just to be better. Maybe we should pray and ask God to help us with it and make sure that's what he wants us to do. And why do we not involve God in those areas? I don't know. We think we can figure it out, or we just don't think about that God cares. He does. Everything that we do with our health should be to steward our body and our health for him better. And here's the thing. Sometimes in his sovereignty, we talked about that last week too. He knows our end of days. He knows the beginning. He knows the end. Sometimes in his sovereignty, we're brought pain. We're brought illnesses, right? We're brought things we have no control over, regardless of how we've stewarded our bodies or our health. Sometimes things come to our life that we have no control over that's not good. Illness, sickness, things that you have no control over, right? You just can't. Suffering, it's there. It's life. But Romans 8:28 does still exist, and God does take even the bad things for his good and work it out for his good. So it can be, you think about Craig being in the hospital for how long has it been now? Like a month? If you've been in the hospital for a day, like you just feel it literally drains you. Like, it's weird that we go to hospitals to get better when you feel like it just drains the life from you when you're there. I've spent a week in the hospital for asthma stuff, and you walk out and you're just like, okay, that part's fixed, but man, everything else is just like, ugh. When things like that happen and you have no control over some of them, you feel as if, well, what's the purpose of this? What's the good in this? There is no good in this. This is all negative. I can't come to church. Right? I can't serve. I can't do the things that I know God wants me to do because I'm stuck here sick. Nothing I can do about it. Nothing that seems like even the doctors are having a hard time doing stuff about it. And that can get discouraging. And that can get to where it's like, well, just throw up your hands and just whatever, ride the roller coaster. And sometimes you have to do that, but you do have to understand that God does know. God knows what happens to us. And every time something happens to us, if Romans 8:28 is true, every time something happens to us, it's for his glory. Right, that's the purpose, even the bad things. And so if we go into anything in life and in health here, talking negative health, if we believe that, then even when the bad things happen in our life, we have to look at it and say, well, this is for God's glory. Whatever is going to happen here, whether it's just me being sick, maybe you get sick and you die. But even still, something coming from that is to glorify God. And if we view the negatives in our life, health-wise, things that if we could change it, I would do it in a minute, right? If I could take this away and never have to deal with it again, where do I sign? Because I will do that. Those types of problems. And think about Paul, and God says, no, you will deal with this. You have to deal with this maybe the rest of your life. And it doesn't matter how hard you willed it to leave or how much doctors would try to, it's never going to go away. You can either fight it, and be upset about it, or we could say, okay, I don't like it. It's not fun. I don't want to deal with it, but I have no choice. So how can God get glory out of it? And those questions aren't always easy. There's not always the easy answer for how can God get glory out of it. But I guarantee you that if God is putting you through it, or if you're going through it, God is there with you, and there is something that can happen from it that will give him glory. So we have to have that attitude. And it's easy for me to say, feeling pretty good up here today, not being sick, right? It's pretty easy for me to say, just look at the bright side of life, right? Okay, that's easy to say when you feel well. But as a Christian who believes in God and has faith that he is who he says he is, that he is going to do what he says he's going to do, Romans 8:28 exists. So even when we're not feeling great, even when we're feeling lousy and everything is glum and there's no hope, God still can get glory out of it. And it's our job to find, where is that at? It's in our attitudes to think that way. In Isaiah, King Hezekiah, right? The prophet came to him and says, you're going to die. Get your stuff ready because life is over. Can you imagine? Pastor comes to you and is like, hey, just want you to know you got like 13 weeks and that's it. So get your stuff in order. You're going to die. That would be terrifying, right? And he was already sick, but the prophet came and said, you're going to die. And he cried out and begged the Lord to spare him, right? Begged God to spare his life. And God being sovereign, he was sick. So he was sick unto death. So he's like on his deathbed. And he cried out, asked God to spare him, and God gave him 15 more years of life and said, okay, because of what you did, here's the thing I want you to do, the physical thing I want you to do to get better, but I'm going to give you 15 more years. And God gave Hezekiah 15 more years. Do you think he used those 15 years to glorify God and do things? Guarantee you he did. Right? So even if we do all we can for our health, only God knows how it ends. And there should be some comfort in that too. There should be comfort for us in those times that God does know the end of it. Whether it ends in you getting better, or it ends in you dealing with it for the rest of your life, or it ends in you not being around anymore. God knows, and that should bring us comfort. In Jesus comes across the blind man. And remember his disciple said, so who sinned here? Did he sin or did his parents sin? Right? They were looking for a reason why this happened. And sometimes we can get into that temptation too. When we get sick or it's prolonged or something happens to us, it's like, why, God? Why? What's the reason? What did I do? Did I do something wrong here? Am I not living the way I'm supposed to be living? Or are you just not, are you mad at me? We look for reasons why things happen. And Jesus says, disciples, that's not the reason. It has nothing to do with sin. It has nothing to do with him or his parents, and it's way beyond that. And we have to understand God's purposes in our sicknesses and in our health, good or bad. Sometimes his purposes are way beyond our comprehension. The disciples had no understanding of why this man has been blind his whole life. And in that day and age, it's not like these days where James can have a job or works from home, right? And James isn't here today. I was kind of hoping he would be. Or where he can, he can live a quote unquote normal life. He's no really any different than the life we live, with some exceptions. This day, man, you're out. Your parents will take care of you. You're on the streets. You're just waiting to die because you can't see. And so this man lived his whole life this way. And it doesn't say how old he was, but I assume he was an adult to some extent. And Jesus has nothing to do with his sin or his parents' sin. It's so that, what? I can get glory. It's so God can get glory. And so he healed him, and God got the glory for it. That was the purpose of that man being blind, was for that specific moment in time where Jesus could come by, explain to his disciples why, and God the Father get glory. That's why he was blind his whole life, is for God's glory in that instant. Now, we feel like, well, I'm not a biblical character. My life doesn't go that way. But God has the same purposes for you in your life and in your health as he did for that blind man. Now, Jesus isn't going to come by and heal you, and that's how God's going to get the glory. But God has the same idea, same purpose for your life as he does for anyone. So whatever the thing is in your life that is bothering you health-wise, God has a purpose for it. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to about asthma, because I have asthma, that just built relationships, things that, and that's simple. That's not even big purpose stuff. But there are purposes that God gives. And in this case, it was so that God would be glorified in what was done. So as we look to apply godly principles to our health and our life, we have to remember to trust his purposes, right? In good times and in bad times. Stewarding our health so we have the greatest capacity to serve him. And that's for us, for those that are mostly healthy, right? We need to steward our health to the point where we are able the most possible to serve God and glorify him to our utmost ability. That's our purpose. I mean, take away health and take away all the reasons. That's our purpose, period. To live our life to glorify him. And that should go through our head every time we do everything. Does this glorify God? Am I bringing him glory? Am I doing things that honor him? These are things that, as we look at our health, that's the ultimate purpose of those things. So as we steward our health and do things to help ourselves be more healthy, it's so that we can serve him better, so that we can glorify him. So again, thinking about fasting, the last series that we did, I don't think it's a coincidence that the last series we did was on fasting, and that was about hungering for him more than ourselves, wanting more of him and less of us. But I mean, it's proven scientifically and biblically that fasting is healthy. Periodic stepping away for food for a time is a health benefit. And, we have Daniel, and we went through Daniel that fasted for, in his case, health purposes, right? They wanted to feed him all the bad stuff, or all the stuff, the rich foods, they called it, things that they weren't allowed to eat or they weren't used to. God doesn't give specifics on why. But Daniel said, don't let us have that. Let us eat what we're used to eating, our vegetable stuff, for 10 days. And if we're not healthier, then you can kill us, basically. And they were healthier than their compatriots because of the diets that they did. So in this case, Daniel was able to serve better because of his health. And it all related to his trust and his faith in God. So the fasting helped him to grow his faith, to be used better. It also helped his health. Elijah, so fasting is a big part of health, I think, and I won't go into that because we talked about it extensively in the last month or two. But we have Elijah. And this is another thing for us. And men, it's not just men. It's definitely women too. But men, we work. That's what we were made to do, right? That's what God made Adam to do, was to tend the garden. One of our main purposes and drives for men is to work. And the thing with men sometimes is we will work ourselves literally to the bone. And we will work ourselves to death. We will take on so much that we will work till we just are depleted. And there's nothing left. And we've given everything that we have to, it could be job work, it could be any kind of, doing things. We will do a bunch of stuff and deplete ourselves, and then we're not as valuable anymore because it's called burnout, right? That's a very common thing. Elijah here in 1 Kings 19, he got burnt out. Look at all the things that he had done previous to his under the juniper tree and just take my life, right? He had done a ton. Spiritually he was exhausted. Emotionally, he was exhausted. Can you imagine, what's Joe Biden's wife's name? Jill. Can you imagine Jill writing you a letter and said, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to hunt you down and I'm going to kill you. Like you did to all these guys, I'm going to kill you. That's what Jezebel did to Elijah. She's like, you're dead. You're a dead man. Right? Emotionally, that's taxing. So he was spiritually taxed, emotionally taxed, and then he ran like a crazy person across the country. He was physically drained, and now when at the end of all that, he was just like, just kill me. It's over. A great man of God, a prophet of the nation of Israel is like, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I gave everything I have. It's over. Just kill me now. And, we can get that way in our lives in general. We're probably not quite that extensive. I don't know that any of us is running that far or calling down fire from heaven. But we can get in our lives just depleted. Because we do. Again, we mentioned this last week. We are busy. We have activities. And as your kids get older, there are more activities that have to be done. And you're running around and you're a taxi driver. You're a cook, right? You're a chauffeur. You're all these things rolled into one. And at the end of the day, you're just like, I'm going to die for hopefully 8 hours here in my bed. No one talk to me, right? That's how we can feel often. And God did 3 things for Elijah here that I think we need to implement into our lives in those moments, and maybe even just in general. So if you look at the things that God did to replenish him, right? Replenish Elijah. His grace gave him 3 things. First thing, solitude. Hi, moms. Do you know what that word means? Solitude. Moms. Mommy, mom, mommy, mama, mom. Like you're in the bathroom and it's still, mom. It's like, mom. It's like, I'm in the bathroom. This is the only place for solitude, right? That's solitude. We all need solitude. We all need time apart. We all need time away. We need time before you hit rock bottom like Elijah did. before you're completely spent and you're running on fumes. I mean, we've all been there. We've all been running on fumes and having nothing left, and you crash. Right? Before that happens, you need solitude. You need time alone. And not just to get alone and be alone and ever leave me alone, but to get alone and be with God and ask God to renew you and to replenish you and to give you strength. But you do. You need time alone. That's why, husbands, you need to take your wife out on dates. You need to get her away from the kids. You need to get her away from the house. You need to get away from all that stuff. Like that's one of our responsibilities, is to take care of our wives in that way. You need to get them out. You need to get them away. You need to get them away from all the kids. I mean, if you got to pay extra money for a babysitter, do it. You can't be like, I can't leave the kids alone with someone. No, find a way. Find someone you trust. And if you can't find them, just leave them with somebody next door. And just say, hey, we're leaving. We'll be back. And just run. What are they going to do? Chase you, maybe. But, I mean, that's the worst. You run faster. But you need solitude. You cannot sustain a breakneck pace forever, right? Without sufficient solitude of rejuvenation. You can't do it. Some may be better at doing it than others, but eventually you will crash. Eventually you'll hit that wall. And it may take years to happen. But in the meantime, all that time, your health is suffering for it physically. Your relationships are probably suffering for it because you're spending all time doing other things. Spiritually, you're probably suffering for it too. Because if you need time of quiet, you can't have devotions and have time with God while your brain is already working on something else. I've been there. I've been there when I'm trying to have devotions and I'm already thinking about the problem that needs to be solved, right? Or the financial issue or the worry or whatever the case may be. That's not solitude. I'm alone, but I'm still working in my brain. You need like turn it off solitude. Get alone with God, solitude. Time away, solitude. That's why vacations are good, right? For guys, and that's the thing too. It's like a badge of honor. I didn't take any vacation days this year. They forced me to take the last 5 vacation days of the year. Okay, cool. What did you gain? Right? At the end of your life, you'd be like, put it on my tombstone. He doesn't take vacation. A vacation when I'm dead. That's the most movie quote, dumb quote I think I've ever heard. You need vacation. You need time off. You need time away. You need rejuvenation. Physically, you need it. And God gives many examples where that's needed. Here with Elijah, he got away. He said, go to this place. Go to this cave. Stay there. Let's just be there. So you need solitude. Secondly, that thing he gave to him is rest. And so again, solitude and rest, not necessarily the same. Sleep is important. It's valuable. And I think the older we get, we realize the value of sleep more and more. As younger, even in my 20s, I don't need sleep. 4 hours a night, fine. I can run on that. It's foolish. If you have that much to do that you can only sleep 4 hours a night, you're doing too much. You're out of balance. You just are. You need sleep. Your physical body needs sleep. Your mental capacity needs sleep, rejuvenation. You need to sleep. You need to sleep well. If there are things that, if you need help sleeping, with whether it's CPAP machines or weight loss or whatever the case may be, you need sleep. And you need to steward your health to a point where you get sleep. So if you need to lose weight, lose weight. If you need to humble yourself and get a CPAP machine, do it. Right? Those are things, men, we don't need it. I'll be tough. I don't need that. Get that out of my face, literally. No, humble ourselves. Steward your health. Get the sleep that you need. Be smart about it. And while we're younger, we need to take advantage of that, right? Because, as I've heard many older guys, specifically, because older women don't really talk to me about it, but older guys said they struggle with sleeping anymore, right? They're up at the crack of dawn. Why is your grandpa always up at the crack of dawn? Because as they get older, they have a hard time sleeping longer. So while you have time, make time for sleep. Sleep well. Get above average sleep. You need it. It's for your health. You need it biblically for rest. Thirdly, you need nourishment, right? In verses 7 and 8 of 1 Kings 19, when Elijah hit rock bottom, God dealt kindly with him. And he'll deal kindly with us, right? And that's again, we're talking about health, but we're talking about God's interest in our health so that we can steward our health for him. But God cares about us. He cares about you. When you're tired, when you're wore out, he cares. And he wants to help you, and he will help you, right? You don't have to do it on your own. God knew Elijah was overtaxed. He knew that he needed something. He needed the rest and the nourishment, right? And he gave him food. right? He gave him food and he gave him water. He needed to be nourished physically, but he needed to be nourished spiritually, right? Make time to replenish yourself. And I mean, the younger, I wish I would have, I mean, I knew this, not to say, I wish someone would have told me, no, but I wish I would have listened maybe, right? When I was in my 20s, to not just go, because I could, because it's a waste. You need time to replenish. Don't give your life to work. They do not love you. I mean, I work for my family, and my business is my business is my family-run business. But Zesto does not love me. Zesto, the work that needs to be done, does not care. Now, my boss might care because he's my dad and he's obligated still to care. But your job does not love you, right? It doesn't care if you it cares that you feel well, so you're there. But it doesn't care what your spiritual state is. It doesn't care what your emotional state is unless it interferes with what you do there. God knew that Elijah needed that time off. And Elijah went farther than he should have before taking that time. So when you're younger, when you're in your 20s, take time with your spouse. Go do stuff. Before kids are around especially, do things together. Go away. Take time off work. Do stuff. Spend time together. Because when kids come, that changes the whole dynamic, obviously. And that's good, right? Those are different stages of life. But as God's people in our health, stewarding ourselves, we need to get off that treadmill sometimes. Sometimes you have to get off the treadmill of activity and just stop. It's biblical. It's not lazy. It's not being selfish. Right? Now, we could take it to extreme where it does become lazy, right? I think we know we're talking about balance here. Whatever measure of health you've been given in your life at this point, it's a gift, regardless of good or bad. Whatever measure of health you've been given in your life at this point, it's a gift from God, right? There are likely many areas in our life where we don't always fully understand or control, health-wise and others as well. Areas that we just don't get. We don't understand it. We don't control it. But everything that God has given to us is a gift. And we need to steward those things, and in this case, our health, the best we can for his use. So I don't have a ton of specific, like doctor, physical health things to do. I'm not the person for that. But I can take what God did for Elijah, what God has done for other people, and other things that he has told John, telling Gaius to be in health. There are principles in the Bible about replenishing yourself, about taking rest, about being healthy so that you can serve him better. And that's the goal. That's the ultimate purpose in our health, regardless of where it is now. The ultimate purpose in our health is for us to do everything we can to steward our health so that we can serve him better. So, I mean, and this will be the last thing I say. If we're just, again, and this is reiterating what I already said, if we're just stewarding our health for our sakes, we're missing something. That may not be you may get good results, right? It may be a good ending. Stewarding your health for you is still healthy. But if that's it, if that's where it ends, if there's no bigger purpose than just being in good health, we're as a Christian, we're just kind of saying, I got it, God. I'll figure it out. I'll be healthy and I'll do what I'm supposed to do, but not really to do anything for you, to just so that I'm good. So as you steward your health, pray about it. I mean, think about it. Ask God to help you with it and try to get the rest and replenishment that we need.